Attention, fans of Unfinished Business Television, we're thrilled to announce our proud partnership with Super 7, the ultimate destination for collectors and pop culture enthusiasts alike. Visit super74.com/AJEPYX today. Use promo code AJEPYX, and let's keep the good times rolling here at Unfinished Business Television.
There is no place more beautiful than Hawaii's Napali Coast.
How far are you going?
The big trail?
You really should see it
Mind if we tag along?
Yeah, are you kidding?
before you die.
They found 2 bodies on the beach.
On August 7th,
Someone on this trail isn't who they say they are.
It could be anybody.
long after the story's over,
People die out here every year.
the twist will keep you talking.
Come on!
A Perfect Getaway. Rated R.
Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of your favorite online show, Unfinished Business Television. And that's right, we're getting the deep dive this week. And I am your host, Jeff Galashaw, also known as Unfinished B1 on social media. And with me, as always, is technical support, co-host extraordinaire, Mr. Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions and award-winning filmmaker of Vendetta Games. Now on its third film.
Keep shaking that bush.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with Vendetta Games, though. That look good. But we are going to talk about a film from 2009 that I am surprised does not get talked about more in the best ways. A Perfect Getaway. This film is written and directed by David, please excuse me if I mispronounce his last name, Toy or Tahoe, who is a legendary screenwriter behind Pitch Black, Chronicles of Riddick, and Terminal Velocity, and just to name a few. This film stars Steve Zahn, Timothy Olyphant, Milla Jovovich, and Kylie Sanchez. It's about a newlywed couple that goes on vacation in Hawaii, and there's a manhunt going on for supposedly 2 serial killers. And we watch this couple as they seem surrounded by suspects and find fast friends or travel friends with this couple played by Timothy Olyphant and Kylie Sanchez, who are very, I would say, tough survivalists, but also high up on the suspicion scale. And as the film goes along, we kind of go into the couple's kind of fears and fantasies of this other couple until later in the film, there are some twists and turns that we'll try not to spoil it, even though this film has been out for quite a while. But I thought when I first saw this film, which I didn't unfortunately see in theaters, I saw it when it came out on DVD. I thought it was something you wouldn't expect, and I felt like the film was so original for that. And I like the cast. This is one of the few times Steve Zahn was cast in a lead that wasn't comedic in its origin. And Milla Jovovich, surprisingly, who you would think would have been the biggest pull for this movie, considering her popularity at the time, she's kind of relegated to more of a supporting character. And then you had Timothy Olyphant, before he got his veneers, you know, kind of a co-lead. And then you have the gorgeous Kylie Sanchez as his girlfriend, fiance in the film. And the thing I didn't know back then that I only noticed now, a young Chris Hemsworth in a supporting role. I mean, I knew who Marley Shelton was at the time, of course. Very voluptuous in this film, but dirty. And Chris Hemsworth, I'm just like watching it now. I'm like, oh my god, he's like almost unrecognizable. But that accent is. Um, Now, my question for you, Andre, what is your history with this film before we probably get more into spoiler territory? And
Well, before I jump into it, I did read how to pronounce Mr. David's name. It's actually 2E.
2E. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
how we will refer to him.
David 2E.
2E. Mm.
I didn't hear about this movie till you brought it up. Now, I might have come
Wow.
across it somehow. I don't recall because, I mean, if I saw something with Milla Jovovich, I'm sure like I may have seen a poster or a trailer, but I really didn't know too much about it. And yeah, from the first glance, I thought it was just going to be like a low rent thriller. And then I'm watching this thing and I'm thinking, again, I'm trying not to get into spoilers yet, but Steve Zahn, being kind of like this aloof type of guy, and I'm thinking like, why would Mila Jovovich be into him? Like, he's always kind of like a, you know, kind of a wimp in movies for the most part. And then, yeah, what I like about it is it does subvert your expectations. It starts out like it's going to be the vacation from hell. You hear all these little backstories about things, and then little by little you start to realize something else more is going on. And then once that twist happens, you're like, wait a minute, this is actually kind of brilliant, especially for the guy that did Riddick, the whole Pitch Black series. This is a pretty underrated thriller. I think it's just hurt by some of its casting because it's hard to believe what happens with Mr. Zahn. And
Okay.
Timothy Olyphant, I don't find him really all that sympathetic. And I'm always mixing him up with Josh Duhamel because they have the same kind of face. So that's the only thing. But I actually did like the movie. I thought it was a nice little twisty thriller.
Well, I think that's like you said, you have so many expectations going into the film that you think you know exactly what's going on, and you see the red herrings, and you're like, oh, it's not going to be that, but it's going to be this, and then it does like a total 180, and you're like, what? And that is why I think I love the film. And I mean, the internet was around back then, but one of the beauties of this film was it wasn't such a major release where everybody went in the first week and then went on the internet and spoiled it. So, it maintained its mystery until you actually watch it. I think it's a film, as we recently talked to Booker T. Mattinson, and he was talking about his latest thriller, An Unusual Suspect. And a lot of what he was saying when it comes to the writing, the directing, the characters is on display here because you're building this backstory, for most of the characters. And then when the twist comes, you're sort of questioning everything that you saw before. And I don't understand I can see the resemblance between Josh Duhamel, but I really like Timothy Olyphant in this, especially in that kind of third act reveal. I kind of actually enjoyed his character and acting, and I was like, finding out that maybe all those stories he tells throughout the film aren't like bullshit as everybody thinks they are. And it's like he becomes kind of a badass. But okay, I guess at this point we'll just start talking about spoilers.
Yeah.
But that is why it's a little hard to believe that he's kind of intimidated by Steve Zahn's character, no matter the fact that he has this, like, I guess, serial killer. Because the film, that's where it's a little wavy. Is he a serial killer or are they just meth heads, who are on a crime spree? And that's never really kind of explained. Um, and my thing was, I guess I've never seen a film where a character goes throughout the film with basically the back of his head shot out. For some odd reason, the first time I felt like they showed the back of his head more and for longer before he finally put on a hat and ties it up. So, but I really like the twist. And I also like that that's when the film kind of shows you Steve Zahn, like before he looked like, oh, I'm this preppy type, all this. But now you're looking at him, he has dirty teeth all of a sudden. He looks unkempt more, and I like that aspect of the filmmaking because as soon as the twist happens, even his whole look totally changes. And I mean, I really enjoyed this film. And now, of course, I notice like, oh, there's a reason why we never really see the couple face first
Right.
in the first part of their home videos. They resemble them close enough, but not to be kind of like if you really saw the couple, not enough to be passable. But I also really enjoyed that scene where Kylie Sanchez is running, gets away, runs into the guys whose kayaks they stole, and then the guy's like, "Yeah, there's only one problem. You're saying she's on drugs, but your pupils are like so dilated. How do you explain that?" And then he just starts shooting. It's like, and and one of the things, I don't know if this was intentional or if this was a reshoot, but also if you notice, Steve Zahn's like eyebrows look totally bleached out at that point. So
Yeah.
that made me wonder, was it a reshoot or was that intentional or what was going on there with that? And
And I also kind of like, yeah, like you said, he kind of looks like a J.J. Abrams type before you start to really reveal like he's a serial killer. But I also like that even with Milla Jovovich, where clearly she's an accomplice, she's not really fully with him once things really start to get kind of hairy. You see that he kind of had like this sort of psychological hold on her that she finally breaks away from. So it kind of adds to the fact that, hey, she was an action star at that point. They weren't just going to like let her get her comeuppance and get killed off so quickly. Like, no, she was actually going to turn around and also be the one that does him in at the end.
yeah, and the thing is, I feel like you couldn't make this film today. Not because of any of the subject matter, but because of spoilers if it was released theatrically. If it was like something that went straight to streaming, this would be right up the alley. But the problem would be they wouldn't, the filmmakers, David Toohey, would not get the budget to make it look as well shot as it is if it was. It'd be like a typical, probably Netflix movie where they all have that kind of scale look, no matter how vivid the filmmaking is. And it and even though they're supposed to be like in Hawaii, I feel like they just film in some third world country. And so I'm just like, um, also I wrote down weird grainy shots and close-ups in certain scenes. I don't know what that was about. Was it supposed to be kind of again throwing the audience off with, certain eye lines and making you focus more on the characters in the background? Because why did the film stock change at a certain point? Not when they're switching, when everything is revealed, but even before that, they would sort of have grainy shots. And
Well, yeah.
one of the things I wasn't sure about was Chris Hemsworth's character. Did he just have a card of a police detective, or was he also supposed to be like some kind of cop? And
No, I thought he was always just a drifter, and then they decided, hey, let's frame these guys because clearly they look the most suspicious.
and I take it he kept the teeth because he didn't want those bodies identified when they were found.
Probably, yeah.
Um, I really enjoyed this one. Out of all of David Toohey's film that he has made, I would say this is his masterpiece. And I like that it's kind of a small scale film that you kind of have to discover. This isn't talked about that much because I feel like if it was, it would be spoiled. So I like that this is kind of a film where you ask your friends, like the friends who say, "Oh, I've seen this, I've seen that," but have you seen A Perfect Getaway? They're like, "No," and you're like, "Check it out. I'm not going to say anything." And even though just saying that, they're going to kind of suspect somehow something happens in this film that I'm not that supposed to surprise me. But I give this film a very high recommendation. I still think it holds up, even if you didn't like Timothy Olyphant, because the way Timothy Olyphant's character is talked about as this Marine and all this, and like, oh, I walk on a plane and I know all the exits, I know how many steps. I'm like, why wasn't that character in Havoc?
Uh,
you know? Because I feel like we'll talk about the movie, but I feel like it was such a thankless role, but he's such a big name to be in the film. They should have given him something more to do in that film. And like, if they ever wanted to make a sequel to this, it would have to be an action film. The way they talked about his character. And though Kylie Sanchez has worked since this film, I would love to see her in a really good movie that actually makes it to theaters. Because I feel like all the rest of the cast is so well known, but she really shines in this film.
You
And
know,
good.
I recommend it too, but I also going back to how you say like the film stock changes in certain shots. Either that was a stylistic choice, or I'm even wondering if David Twohy was forced to do reshoots on this film because, as you know, there's a director's cut of this film. He was having fights over the rating. I think he was trying to shoot for an R. They wanted PG-13. So that could have been a possibility that they were trying to make him tone some of the violence down. And it is pretty damn violent for its rating.
Yeah, because I'm like, what studio executive? I understand they probably wanted to open up the markability, but if you read the screenplay, what made you think this was PG-13 in the first place?
Oh.
It's like, I mean, there's no real nudity except for like kind of see a bare butt scene. And that's as far as nudity goes with the heavenly Kylie Sanchez. Have I mentioned her enough in this review? So please come on the show. But I'm just like, this is one of those films that I feel like slipped through the cracks and never quite got the audience it deserved. And because I think it's a tight thriller, and I really wish more people would kind of talk about it and look at how many early career roles you have in this. You even have Holt McCallney as the police lieutenant. It's a small role, but even him, and I'm just like, you got this stack is so this film's cast is so stacked, and I'm just like so enthusiastic about this film, and I just feel like somehow it got robbed, and Steve Zahn never got to play this type of character ever again either.
No.
And he's good at it. Steve Zahn is like, I know he mainly plays like comedic characters and now dads and stuff. I just felt like even though he worked a lot, he never got some of the roles or a chance to play some of his better aspects. Like again, a serial killer or even a criminal in any film. It was like this and Out of Sight. And that was it. The end of his criminal play. And everything since then has been like suburban dads, or wacky comedic roles.
He was in War of the Planet of the Apes
Didn't see it.
as an ape.
But you could just recognize his voice. Like, that's Steve Zahn.
Oh, yeah. And he gets the comedic parts in there. Yeah.
See, again, comedic. Even in serious films, like, hey, we need a comedic relief, Steve Zahn. And how come he never got it to be in like any of these ensemble comedies like the Judd Apatow? I'm sure he can improv. It's like, and I wish Milla Jovovich kind of had a mini comeback. Stop making. Well, I don't think she's in the Resident Evil movies anymore, and she doesn't seem to be in as many monster thrillers anymore. So I'd like to see her kind of make a comeback. I don't know, maybe Paul W. Away from her husband.
Yeah, get away from Paul.
Well, we know she ain't gonna be in a Luc Besson film. Now she's too old. He likes his ladies young, too young. I'm just gonna say, I think he did a lot of research for The Professional. That's all I'm gonna say. But is there any last things you'd like to say about A Perfect Getaway?
It's a nice thriller. It's got a lot of subversion that I think really makes it different. Again, some out of the box casting. Chris Hemsworth is creepy. It's obviously before Thor and making him like the next big thing in Hollywood. So I think it's one of those lost gems that I think needs to be rediscovered.
Exactly. Thank you. And please, if you're watching the first half, just stop at the first half of this thing before spoilers, and then come back to this episode and then talk to us. And David Twohy, we would love to interview you about your career, and especially, I have so many questions about this film. So please, if you, by some miracle anybody knows him or you're watching this, please come on the show. We would love to interview. And while we're talking, no, never mind. So that ends this week's business down in the deep dive. But we always have more business awaiting you down here in the deep dive. Hey, Aquaman. So we'll talk to you later, guys. And
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.